Welcome back to another Berry and Birders episode. Today we are going to talk about cackling goose.
All right.
So cackling goose is is kind of an early migrant to look for, and obviously the question is how do you find these things? And the first step is find a whole lot of Canada geese, and then you're looking for a small one. This bird you can see kind of right in the middle is literally half the size of the Canadas. Now there's some migratory races of Canada that are definitely a size smaller, so you can't just go on size, that you have to look at some other things as well.
Interesting. Yeah. So definitely difficult to pick out unless you're really looking closely at these birds. And like you mentioned, there's lots of, there's also lesser Canada goose, right, which is a subspecies. There's just so many other possibilities that you need to rule out, which is tricky, when you're looking for these geese.
But here you can see right now how short the neck is compared to the other Canada behind it. Just kind of sometimes, and that's another thing, that geese will be aggressive towards things that aren't other Canada. So sometimes they will be aggressive towards white front or what have you. But one of the things here, we can see a much shorter neck on the cackling goose compared to the Canadas. That when it's leaning forward, you can see kind of the crook in the neck of the Canadas here, whereas the cackler is pretty much just kind of leaning straight down in order to see it. A little bit hard to see. You can also see there's a decent black throat stripe on cackling goose. The problem with some of these geese is that there's a lot of overlap, and not every plumage thing works on every single bird. But sometimes you can get a sense of a much more of a black throat stripe on the cackling geese. Most Canadas are almost entirely white underneath there.
Interesting. So how common is this bird? When do we start looking for this bird on, where we are in Michigan? When does cackling goose start becoming something we could possibly run into?
Yeah, I always think of it as kind of February, especially March, but this is one of the first migrants to be coming back. So this is something to be sought out right now. It, along with golden eagle, which ironically is the bird that I was looking for when someone had and couldn't find, but drove around and found some geese. I'm like, oh, well, let me check these things, and this little guy stood out. Now, as it's kind of walking across here, you're going to kind of start to see kind of another one of the characters that is sometimes helpful to pull out cackling geese, and that's they have a lot kind of brighter edging in these secondaries, sometimes much more so than the Canada geese do. The most important thing is the bill, and here it's got its head up and it's walking around. The bill is much shorter proportionately. Here you can see this big Canada going past. That bill would reach kind of all the way back past. If you just reflected it back, it would reach all the way to the back of the white chin patch. Whereas this guy is much smaller. That bill is going to barely reach halfway into the white cheek. So you're looking for a bird with a stubby bill, and they frequently have a more vertical forehead. You can kind of get a sense of here. The forehead is much more vertical than that sloping, more canvasback-like look of the Canadas. Here you can see kind of that the edging is a little stronger and some lights in the back here than, say, like this bird. That it does have kind of stronger edging there. And here's kind of another view of kind of cackling goose to kind of review some of those features. That a nice bright adult male is going to have this nice crisp edging, which is quite pretty. Now here you can see another cackling behind it, either female or a first-year bird. That it's a lot less pronounced. Not everyone will have that, but every cackling goose is going to have a short, stubby bill. It just doesn't go very far back. A Canada goose that would be reaching at least 30% longer. That you just have to see the bill when you're identifying a cackling goose and go with structural characteristics.
And I think it's worth noting too, when you look at these birds, I've seen a lot of people mis-ID them based on size, but when these birds can have their necks in many different positions, so it can look smaller or it can look huge, but really the bill is the way you're going to tell, these species apart.
And like you said, the size. The issue is that the Canada geese that are around all the time are referred to as giant Canadas. They're the largest subspecies, and I forget where they come from originally, but they're the ones that live in all the golf courses and retaining ponds and cornfields. The migratory Canadas are solid size smaller than are the giant ones that are around all the time. So it's not uncommon to see a migratory Canada, and it's noticeably smaller, but that still doesn't necessarily make it a cackling goose. You've got to have that short stubby bill, and a vertical forehead is good. Supporting characters, if you've got this bright edging, not everyone will have that. That's helpful. You kind of get a sense of kind of this one has more of a black median throat line than most Canadas have. Again, not everyone will have that, but many of them will. So that's identification of cackling goose. Now the fun is just go out there and find one.
Yes, absolutely. Good luck. Like, comment, subscribe.
We'll see you next week.